Welcome to Pro Wrestling with Juice. Today we are going to be going over our most over wrestlers in my lifetime. This is just my opinion. Everything in this is not factual necessarily. It is all just from my brain, my recollection, my memories, nostalgia, all that good stuff. And any video I do like this is usually going to be just my opinion. So feel free to weigh in the comments below with what you think is wrong about this video, people you agree with, maybe if you'd adjust it a little bit. I would love to hear about it. Maybe I'm overlooking some people in your eyes. Again, post it in the comments below. With that said, let's dive into it. So I'm going to start at number 20. Let's go with number 20. So number 20 is, in my opinion, and this one was more of a fun one for me than anything else. And I have a lot of reasons for doing this, but number 20 for me is actually a tag team. And this tag team is arguably the greatest tag team of all time, but they are also probably the most over tag team of all time. And that is going to be the Legion of Doom. That's right. I think the Legion of Doom are obviously one of the most over tag teams of all time, if not the most over tag team of all time. And even as single stars, Hawk was probably one of the most over wrestlers in general during the 80s and 90s. So again, number 20, Legion of Doom. Number 19 for me is none other than the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. You can't argue with how over he was. He has been instrumental in pro wrestling. Obviously, he's passed now, but in the 80s and 90s, again, he was really over. Obviously, in the 90s, he didn't really wrestle very much before he retired, but he was always influential in Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, down in Florida. Again, legendary wrestler. I don't see how anyone can actually argue with that. Now, the next one, I think, was a very over wrestler in spite of in-ring talent, in spite of putting on great matches, in spite of all of that. And number 18 for me is none other than the Ultimate Warrior. So when I was a child, everyone liked Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior. I was born in 1985, early 90s, we're hitting grade school. Again, pretty much everyone had their favorite between Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. And for a while there, it felt like, as a kid, Ultimate Warrior might even be a touch more popular than Hogan. Now, looking back on it, I don't think that was true, but it felt that way at times. So again, number 18, Ultimate Warrior. Number 17, and this one I probably would not have had here if it wasn't for recent events. Number 17, I have CM Punk. Now, before he returned to AEW recently, I wasn't really, even when I heard the rumors, I wasn't even excited about it, really. I was very curious how it would go over. And the minute his music hit, I popped like a little girl. I was stoked about it. And everybody went nuts. The shirts crashed the Pro Wrestling Tee site and everything. So it made me realize just how over he was. And, so I have him at number 17. Number 16, in my opinion, this one is a guy who was amazing in the ring, a great wrestler, tons of accolades, tons of achievements. And, I wonder what his career could have been if it wasn't for a couple things. Number 16 for me is Kurt Angle. Now, I wonder, if he didn't have the prescription pill issues and if he didn't have the multiple neck injuries and stuff like that, how would he be wrestling today? What would his career have been if he never left WWE? Or if he left because he wanted to wrestle in other promotions rather than because he had prescription pill issues. So again, number 16, Kurt Angle, in my opinion, one of the greatest wrestlers. Number 15, this one, he's had some amazing moments in wrestling. I think he's pretty solid in the ring. I think he's, got decent charisma and things like that. But when it comes to how over he is, I actually have Randy Orton here. I know this might be controversial compared to someone like Kurt Angle and things like that. Just to give you guys an idea of some of the things I used for this, I actually looked at Google search trends over the last 20 years. So that was something I looked at. I looked at other polls over the last 30 years. So I did do some research in putting this list together. In some instances, I did use my own personal bias and recollection on things, because you can't just judge things based on a single article here, a single article there kind of thing. But I tried to use as much data in coming up with these, and Randy Orton was almost always ahead of Kurt Angle since he got into wrestling in Google searches and things like that. So that's why I have Randy Orton at number 15. Number 14 is a wrestler that has international appeal. He is somebody who, from the 90s up till even recently, he has been around, and a lot of people consider him their favorite. So I have at number 14, Rey Mysterio Jr. Rey Mysterio Jr. was huge for the cruiserweights in WCW in the 90s, and he was huge when he returned to American wrestling in WWE. People love Rey Mysterio. He's slowed down quite a bit in recent years, but again, he's always been a draw. He's always been known to put on solid matches, and he is over. The next one, number 13, is one of the more current stars, and he is somebody that I would be very curious to hear what you guys think of this one, but I have Roman Reigns at number 13. I just think he's extremely over right now. I think he is the next guy to be the top dog, of course, in wrestling. He is currently the top dog in WWE. But I think he's that next guy to kind of transcend and be like, The Rock. Maybe not The Rock, but the John Cena, and carry the company. Will he ever be as over as John Cena? Probably not. But he is almost at that level, in my opinion. And I think with some more, really important feuds, a really good rivalry or two here and there that could, be comparable to, say, Rock and Austin, stuff like that can really, really set him off. And, they can do it with Brock Lesnar. They can do it with Seth Rollins. So Roman Reigns could rise up this list before he retires. But right now, I have him at number 13. Number 12 surprised me a little because, again, I used data. Now, this data, like I said, the Google search trends had a guy floating around since 2000 around the number 3 and 4 spot most of the last 20 years. And honestly, I thought it would be higher. And I'm just going to throw it out there. It's the Phenom. It's the Undertaker. It's Mr. WrestleMania Streak. He is number 12 for me. And again, it's because of where the data had him. I actually, if it was just my personal opinion for how over they were, I probably would have put him a little bit higher. But because I was trying to factor in other data and other polls, I have the Undertaker at number 12. Number 11, again, data for me led me to believe this. There were times when he was crushing people when it came to Google Trends and things like that, where he was 3-4 times higher than the next person on the list. And that is Brock Lesnar. When he returned to the WWE after being gone for a few years, when he first came back, right? We're talking about 5-6 years ago. It was nuts. Actually, maybe longer than that now, but it was absolutely nuts. And I know everyone has problems with how boring his matches are now and how, he just does a few moves. He's not trying to go out there and do the stuff he used to try and do. His character's all different, basically, since his UFC career. And so I know a lot of people don't like the part-timer thing, and, it is what it is. He's a draw. He sells merchandise. He puts people in seats, all that stuff. So, again, Brock Lesnar, number 11. Number 10, and the only reason I have this person at number 10 is because of how long they have been so over. And that is going to be Sting. In WCW, he was arguably their most popular babyface until Hulk Hogan joined in the mid-90s. He was easily the most over wrestler in WCW up until Goldberg came around. He also was still over after that, but didn't wrestle that much. Really, ever since he took that time off and kind of adopted that Crow gimmick in WCW, he slowed down on how much he wrestled after that. Obviously, he was integral for the Wolfpack and things like that. And he was very popular in TNA. And fans always wanted to see him go to WWE. Always over. So for me, he's at number 10 because of the longevity in combination with other things. Number 9 is somebody who has been extremely popular for decades. Some would say he's the greatest wrestler of all time. I will say he is not the greatest wrestler of all time on my list, but when it comes to how over they were in popularity, I have number 9 as the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Again, Ric Flair, dating back to even before I was born, has been really popular, multi-time champion in variety of promotions, WWF, WWE, WCW. I mean, he's done it all and been everywhere. So again, number 9, Ric Flair. Number 8. Now this again might be controversial by some people out there, but I have Bret Hart. Bret Hart is a guy that we have all said, what if he never had that concussion from Goldberg? He wasn't booked really well in WCW in my opinion, but he definitely was a great wrestler, had great matches with guys like Benoit. I feel like he had a good match with Sting. I was very interested to see how his feud with Goldberg would go. Was hoping maybe he would teach Goldberg some things and Goldberg might improve quite a bit from working with Bret Hart, but we never got to see that, and that is unfortunate because of the injury. But yes, it's one of those things where if he didn't get hurt, would he still be wrestling today? Would he have retired, 5-10 years ago? Who knows? What could have happened? What would have happened when he returned to WWE, after he forgave Vince, if he never had that injury? So again, Bret Hart, number 8. Number 7, I have as the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels in the 90s was, in my opinion, one of the more over guys before the Attitude Era. I feel like him and Bret Hart really carried pro wrestling as a whole for a while. I really liked WCW as a kid around that time, but I really liked Shawn Michaels. His feuds with Diesel and Sid and The Undertaker, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart, the 60-minute Iron Man match with Bret Hart. To me, HBK was extremely over, and he basically carried the WWF with some of those guys. There were a couple of them at the top, but once you got past the top, I can't really see a lot of people at the bottom that were really doing much there. So again, it was just that main event was solid, but HBK stood out in my opinion. The next one for me, coming in at number 6, was extremely over. I think politics in wrestling held him back. I think he could have been possibly a little bit higher on this list if that weren't the case. He was extremely popular in commercials. Everybody in the 90s knew who this was. And people today still remember who this was. People still have fond memories of him that might not even like wrestling today. So again, number 6 for me is Randy Savage. Randy Savage was super popular in the 80s and 90s. He had a unique character, very intense, very well liked. And again, I wonder what would have happened if he bought WCW. I know he was trying to at the end there. What would have happened? Who knows? Number 5. Now, this one barely made my list at all. And the reason he almost didn't make my list is when I was born in 1985. He was on the end of his career. He did wrestle for another 5-6 years, I think. Was extremely popular, was booked strong. And this guy, number 5, is Andre the Giant. He was very popular for his role in The Princess Bride, and he was popular because of just how they booked him and how they build him as undefeated for a decade, even though he wasn't, and how they build him as the man nobody could slam, even though multiple people slammed him. Hulk Hogan slammed him multiple times before WrestleMania 3. So again, they just kept billing him this way, and they kept repeating things, and it just ingrained in your head. But the crowd believed it, and he was popular. He was on covers of video games, all that stuff back in the Nintendo days and stuff. So again, number 5, Andre the Giant for the most over wrestler in my lifetime. Number 5. Number 4. Now, this one again, I think has really stepped up at a time that was difficult for star power. Now, WWE has done a good job at times of rebounding when they needed to. In the early 2000s, they had megastars in The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. When both of those guys left, it felt like there was a huge hole left in the company. And guys stepped up. But this one, when he came on the scene a little bit after that, I think really put the company on his back. And a couple good feuds with Eddie Guerrero and some others, Triple H feud, a Batista feud, Randy Orton. To me, number 4, John Cena. John Cena is amazing. And I just don't think when you're talking about most over wrestlers of all time, I don't see how John Cena cannot make your top 5. He was the man in the, and when he comes back now, he still draws. It sucks that he's part-time as a wrestling fan. Always wanted to see that long heel run, possibly leading a stable. I think that would be interesting and could make him so much more interesting in my opinion. But again, number 4, John Cena. Number 3, so the top 3 here. This was not that hard for me to do. Number 2 and 3, I think, are basically 1A, 1B. I could see people thinking my third choice should have been number 2 or possibly number 1, but it's not that way for me. Number 3 I have as Hulk Hogan as the most over, number 3 most over wrestler of my lifetime. Hulk Hogan really put wrestling on the mainstream map in the 80s. And his match with Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3, while, from a technical standpoint, isn't the greatest match ever, from a performance standpoint, is just not that great. However, the things they did great was they made you believe that Andre the Giant is unbeatable. And, Andre the Giant took the slam. That was a huge deal. If you ever go back and watch it, you'll see the crowd goes crazy about it. That's because Hulk Hogan was white hot. People loved Hulk Hogan. His role in Rocky Rocky 3, again, another thing that really helped boost him popularity-wise. And you can't argue. He was the biggest star in the 80s. He was the biggest star in the early 90s. Hell, even when he went to do movies in the 90s that were garbage and wasn't wrestling, he was still probably the biggest star in wrestling. He then went to WCW, the NWO formed, and him being part of that, I think, in combination with Hall and Nash, made him, it revived his career. It made him relevant for another few years, and I think really boosted his popularity again. Arguably, the NWO is the greatest heel faction of all time. We will do a video about that sometime, too, about factions and stuff. But yeah, Hulk Hogan, number 3. Now, number 2, again, this one could be lower on the list in a lot of your eyes because of longevity. But I have it as The Rock. And probably not because of, his wrestling career itself, but the stuff he's done, with movies and how he's still been an ambassador for pro wrestling in the WWE. People associate The Rock with wrestling. They still do. Again, late 90s, he and the Stone Cold Steve Austin, after, Brett left and HBK left, they were the feud. They had that multiple year run with WrestleManias, back to back. They had the retirement match, basically, in the 2000s with each other at WrestleMania. So again, The Rock for me is number 2. He arguably at any given time could have been considered the guy. So I think in 2000 he pretty much was running through and he was the guy. Number one, to me, this was easy. There's no debating it. And number one is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was the guy, the most popular wrestler at a time that pro wrestling was at its peak of all time. Monday Night Wars, Stone Cold Steve Austin was the most over wrestler. And I don't think there's any debating that. He was far more over than Hulk Hogan. He was more over than The Rock for most of that time. And it's unfortunate that, he had the broken neck with Owen Hart. It's unfortunate that he had other injuries after that were just crippling. It really sucks because I wonder also with him, if he didn't have those issues, would he have wrestled longer? What would have happened if he was wrestling, 2006, 2007? Would he have still been the megastar that he was? Hell, I would still love to see Stone Cold come back, and I don't even know if he could go now. I mean, he looks like he's in great shape and like he could, but I would go nuts if Stone Cold came out of retirement just for a single match or two. But yeah, so that's my list. Would love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below. This was Pro Wrestling with Juice. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and give us a like if you like this. And if you just think this list is garbage and completely disagree, feel free to thumbs down it as well. We'll be doing more of these. We're going to be doing a best in-ring wrestlers during my lifetime. We're going to be doing best entertainment skills. And we will also be talking about some of my favorite feuds and moments of all time. All of this will culminate in a single video that is the best wrestlers of my lifetime based on these other lists I've just mentioned. So if you guys want to see that, again, smash that subscribe button. This is Pro Wrestling with Juice. I am Juice. We'll see you guys next time.